9:30, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us today for this session titled Using Esri Dashboard and Data Transformation Tool to Integrate with Vendor Cloud Solutions. We have Steve Averett and Skip Daniels, both from the City of Greensboro, with us today. And Steve is a graduate of Elon College and UNCG. He has got the BA from Elon and a Master of Public Affairs from UNCG. And in the past 25 years, he has served as the manager for the city of Sanford, Gaston County, Orange County, and now the City of Greensboro. Mr. Averett is also an appointed member of the North Carolina Geographic Information Coordinating Council. Skip is an app developer for the City of Greensboro. He's been in the business for about 20 years. He went to Western Carolina and got a degree in computer information systems and emergency incident management. I think that's close. He also enjoys doing a lot of things outside in the outdoors, such as hunting and camping. And to show or illustrate his varied interests, he also is really into 3D printers. Before I toss it over to them, just a reminder that all the videos are being recorded and will be on our YouTube channel shortly, so you can give your undivided attention to them. And also be sure to hit that chat button in the right-hand side of your screen and toss any questions or comments you may have there, and we'll address those at the end of the session. So with that, gentlemen, I'll turn it over to you.
Steve, you're muted.
There we go. All right, good morning, everybody. Steve Averett, City of Greensboro. I want to apologize in advance. I've got a puppy crated next to me, so you'll probably hear a little bit of whining in the next 15, 20 minutes. He can only be quiet so long. Skip and I are here to discuss some work we've done over the past couple of years. I know that a lot of people do presentations on really cool dashboards. There are so many out there. If you spend a few minutes searching the web, there's some dashboards that will just blow your mind. So we didn't really come here to impress you with our dashboard and show off the dashboard. We felt like it was more important for us to talk about the journey of getting there and why that dashboard was necessary. And we think this is a situation a lot of you will identify with. The title of our presentation obviously is Integrating GIS with Third-Party Software Solutions. So first of all, let's see if any of this sounds familiar to people. One of your departments decides to buy a software solution with minimal input from IT, right? They don't ask anybody, they just go buy something. Their money's tight, no budget, so they select the best budget option. Hooray, they're saving the city money, right? Good for them. Then implementation begins and progresses. Somewhere along the way, the staff realizes that key components of functionality are missing. They've bought a software that doesn't quite do everything they expected it to do. They didn't realize that they didn't consider the integration points and or public interfaces. A lot of times the vendor goes, oh yeah, we've got a public interface, but people never look at it. We get to the end and realize it's not sufficient. What happens in that case? IT to the rescue. IT and or GIS is finally brought in to figure out how to make it all work, usually deep into the integration process or implementation process, and sometimes even after the fact. They think they're done and realize they're not. So guys like Skip and I and many of you often have to step in and put all the pieces together. So this is Greensboro's story of code compliance. In years past, Greensboro had used an in-house built solution for almost 20 years. Of course, those things become untenable, so you have to replace those. In early 2018, Greensboro selected MyGov as the replacement to its native code compliance solution. At the time, MyGov had no customers the size or complexity of Greensboro. They had minimal staff and they used lightweight back-end resources. So it was a small kind of startup company. Early in the process, GIS staff pointed out that MyGov's public interface fell far short from the existing interface. I think everybody in the room just said, we'll deal with that when we get to it. Let's just look at the upfront part first. So the public interface was forgotten or ignored until after the internal implementation was near complete. So just before the go live in November 2019, They started showing the executive level and city council this new program they'd implemented. And of course, everybody was upset about the lack of a public interface. So city council demanded better. As we had already expected, based on our earlier observations, we knew we were going to have to step up and help these guys at the end. So we were kind of prepared for it. So we offered to step up and provide some kind of temporary solution that could help them provide a public interface. And of course, Esri's dashboard technology was going to be the best option for us. So this is a story of creating a fast and furious solution and how GIS software, very talented staff, and aggressive IT management saved the day in this particular case. We had to jump on this really quick. There wasn't a lot of time to develop the process out like we wanted to. So we just had to just bear down and just bull ourselves forward here. First thing to do was look at the public interface requirements. Like, what was the bare necessity of what this thing had to do and how are we going to make it happen? These requirements were pretty simple. Obviously, we had to have access to MyGov's code compliance data, right? Without their data, there's nothing for us to show in the public interface. So we needed to be able to read the data directly or be able to copy it frequently. We need to search by case status, case type, city council district, and case dates. Simple enough. We needed to display the cases on an interactive map. Obviously, people want to see where the cases are, especially in relation to their council districts. We didn't have highly customized pop-ups. The basic pop-ups just out of the box weren't going to be able to handle some of the functionality we needed to throw at them. And we needed to provide case history and case details, which was a more complicated set of data on MyGov's back end. So the first part, accessing the data, that was pretty tough. MyGov's data storage is basically, it was cloud-based, and they're using MySQL on the back end, which we were a little surprised to hear, though not really, I guess. We were hoping it was something a little more robust, but it wasn't. We tried connecting directly to the database, but the performance was too slow and too unstable. After a few days of trying that, we realized that was not going to work. Here, I'll let Skip take over because this is where Skip's expertise really kicks in. Skip's somewhat of an expert with NIME, and these are some of the solutions that he came up with to work on data access. Skip, do you want to jump in from here?
Yeah, like I said, the Greensboro GIS staff, we choose NIME. NIME's an open source data miner that can deal with about any type of database or any forms of data. So we found out that we needed to copy the data every 24 hours to our server. Many reasons, because one reason, like I said, the data connections, we couldn't do a direct connect. Another thing, the data wasn't even spatial. So we would have to generate through processes, points and stuff. So, we got a token from them to be able to connect to their database, which they gave us views for that. So the process basically was, after NIME copies the data every night to our SQL server, well, we're using SQL and Python scripts to transform the data basically into a usable format that we can use. Everybody, you got to remember, data's data, but you never get it as clean as you want it. We had to reformat the addresses, generate XY coordinates for our points. Some of the requirements was we had to add city council districts with that. And the codes were based on the official codes, which the public wouldn't know what those really were. So we translated the codes to a better code description for them. And then we had to, with that, we had to move case IDs, which was only in the history tables, to the case tables to be able to reference back history. The final product of this transformation is we created a web service for this. And if any of the steps fail, I built a backup that will bring back the previous day's data back into the database, so we will never lose functionality of our application.
All that sounds simple enough, but as you can see here, this is Skip's diagram that he uses in NIME to make all the data transfers occur.
Yeah, there was little extra things with that. Our open data division needed a CSV, and also I created also a CSV of all the data coming each day just for a backup of a backup. But yeah, NIME, it looks just like Model Builder in a way. And basically it's really a straight format, which we did have to translate some of the SQL, MySQL cases to a Microsoft SQL case type variable because of differences between the databases.
Yeah, and I'll add in, if any of you are not familiar with NIME, I wasn't very familiar with it until Skip started using it, and I was just really blown away at the speed and efficiency this program works at. It was able to pull this data in literally 5 times faster than anything else we were using. So it's turned out to be a very, very elegant and efficient solution for us. Looking at code compliant search capabilities, this is just a screenshot of the dashboard, just the filters you can use to search on cases. And of course, it looks simple enough, but anybody that's built the dashboard knows what can go into some of these filters behind the scenes, especially things like council districts which weren't native to the data itself. But we did keep it pretty simple. Again, case status, case type, council district. Obviously, it was very important that council members know which district all these cases are in, because a lot of times the public, I guess, wants to escalate their issues and they don't feel they're being treated fairly by the city or whatever. They want to go straight to the council person. So that was one of the more critical pieces of data was knowing which district these cases occurred. So mapping the data, another requirement was to be able to visualize the locations. And again, the way it came over from MyGov did not have the capability. And Skip basically made this happen. The bad part was that there's almost 80,000 cases. So sometimes the application is a little bit slow trying to draw this. We implored them not to do this. We looked at other options to have the map come up with less data on it with some view restrictions, but the stakeholders ultimately wanted to be able to show where all the cases were at. So we don't think it looks very good, but it works. And Skip, I'll let you take over the pop-ups here.
All right. With each case, there could be up to like 10 history reports from it. So I was using Arcade to be able to naturally format the pop-ups into a better looking format like you see there, but then also to be able to generate URLs to get those case reports. And like I said, they could be up to 10. So instead of saying, having 10 reports show up in each one and only one works, I used Arcade to be able to come up with the expressions to be able to generate the URL and also put the link in there based on if the case SA key was null or not null. So you've got 2 examples there. One had one case, one report, and the other one has 2 reports. So Arcade is really good to use for different things, especially stylizing your pop-ups.
Yeah, and I'll add in this was it took us a long time to develop this process. The data that we have that comes over from MyGov is basically just a skeleton format of just the basic case data. And what people really wanted to see was the case history and case details. So it was very important to be able to link to the data in these reports. It's tough enough pulling over the basic data we do every day, but there would have been no way to pull in literally the entire system, to show this more detailed data. And MyGov wasn't real clear on how to handle this. So this was actually a solution that Skip developed and proposed to them. And we basically walked them through how to make it work on their end as well as our end. So this, we sort of take credit for this whole piece of functionality, and it actually works. It works very well. So it's turned out to be an elegant solution. But again, it's just another example of working with a small vendor and having to use expertise in-house to make the small vendor successful. So, yeah, this is touching on what I was just going over. Again, MyGov just provided us a basic structure. The stakeholders were adamant that they could see all the case details. One of the kind of fears in this was that once the code compliance dashboard was able to link into all of the code the case history and case details, it almost meant that the in-house staff didn't really need the MyGov front-end software. Yep. As we developed this code compliance dashboard, a lot of the city staff just looked at that and said, wow, this kind of really gives us everything we need. If we're researching case history or researching a case in general. So that there was kind of a fear that we almost, stepped away from the backbone of this, which was the MyGov application itself. In case, I think a lot of the staff does use the dashboard quite a bit more. But the key to all this was just working with MyGov staff to develop a mass method to pass that case ID from the dashboard pop-ups back into MyGov's backend, where it generates the requested report and then sends it back to the browser. It would have been nice if it could have sent the report back into the dashboard itself, but that functionality was not there, so it actually just sends it back to a downloadable PDF that's separate from the dashboard. So, and this is just a screenshot of one of the case overviews. This is one of the PDFs that you get back from when you click on the link in the pop-up. Sort of is our finale here. I want to circle back and again stress that the point of this presentation was what it takes to work with a small vendor and how to be successful with a small vendor with a limited scope of software. I want to talk about some of the advantages to working with a small vendor. Obviously, the vendor is eager to please because they want to add you as a reference. They want to say, hey, we've worked with Greensboro, we've worked with Durham, we've worked with Wilmington or whatever. That they want to have the bigger cities on their resume so that they can sell to the smaller cities. Another advantage is a lot of times their application immaturity allows for flexibility. These vendors sometimes have newer software platforms and they're still trying to build it out, and you can actually, based on your needs and requirements, you can actually help them build their software out because they're still flexible at that point. They haven't set things in stone, so to speak. With a smaller vendor, you've got fewer decision makers to ease the path to progressive scope creep. Typically, we all hate the word scope creep because it means something bad for us. But in the case of dealing with a small vendor, we get the scope creep on them, which is a nice turn of events, which we certainly did with MyGov. They sold us one product, and because they had one guy at the top that was able to make decisions, they were convinced him to expand the scope of what we were trying to do and make the software more functional for us. And typically there's lower upfront costs. These startup companies are trying to get business, so they're undercutting other people. So there's a few advantages to working with the small vendor. There are also disadvantages. I know we're all aware of these. Again, going back to application immaturity, although it allows for flexibility, it can also allow for instability. And we've discovered plenty of that with MyGov. Those data downloads that we do every night don't always happen, or they don't always happen smoothly. And the application doesn't always run quite the way we expect it to. So another disadvantage, they have fewer and lower skilled staff able to address complex issues. If you don't have your very own skilled staff, you could be in trouble with a smaller vendor because they typically don't have a lot of very powerful programmers or database administrators or application managers. they're running on shoestring budgets, so they're kind of dependent on their customers to help them get through some of these issues. Another disadvantage, they have the inability to say no to clients' unreasonable requests. We ran into this a couple times in this. We had people from code compliance asking for too many things, trying to go to the well too many times. And we felt like that kind of damaged some of the efforts we were trying to do on our end. Sometimes we wish these guys would say no a little more often and kind of manage their scope creep better. Another disadvantage is their dependence on lightweight back-end solutions, right? They're trying to make money, so they try to go cheap. They try to find open source software, try to find like budget cloud solutions, which MyGov has done. But to their credit, they make this stuff work. So we're definitely not trying to run MyGov into the ground. We like MyGov. They've worked with us very well. They helped us develop a positive solution. It's just issues of dealing with a small company. That's all it was. So. And again, another disadvantage of working with a small vendor is you invariably have to have your own skilled and talented staff in-house to help create these solutions. Without somebody like Skip, or even myself to some extent, this would have never happened. The city would have never gotten a public interface, to their code compliance solution. So, again, I'm sure a lot of you have been in that case where you've had to go in and save the day on projects like this. And with that, I think we've moved along pretty quick here. With that, I'm going to quit sharing my screen and I'm going to let Skip just do a very quick walkthrough of the dashboard itself. You've heard us talk about it enough. You might as well just get a quick peek at it. Skip, you want to share yours up?
Okay, this is our code compliance dashboard. Basically, what we showed in the slides, we have the ability to show just active and closed cases. So you hit active, it's going to redraw and do everything for active cases. We broke down all the code compliance down to 6 levels here of case types. So you can filter from that, council districts, and then a date range for that. We show that we got 78,370 cases open and closed. We also have a selection list here that you can click to automatically go there. Indicators at the bottom showing all the active cases. Then we have it here for closed cases. And then for the council districts, we have active and closed. That's showing closed. I got to check on that. But we're showing all the active cases right now for each council district. We also have the ability here to search by address or like case number. So if the person checking this out can also just type in a case number. You can see we have addresses here. We do have case numbers. Sorry, that was my supervisor. It'll zoom in and naturally do the pop-up to it. For that, like you showed in the slides, we do have the pop-up here. So if you want to see everything in that case report, basically you just click that, sends the request to MyGov. They generate a PDF for that. It downloads it, and then you can open it. Here's your case report for that, including this one had images and stuff. So it gives you the flexibility of looking at, this has all the violations and inspections with that. And like I said, all the history, there was a lot of history of different inspections and violations to this property. So like I said, also the cases and the selections are also tied into the map, so it makes it a little bit easier to look for things. So, anybody doing dashboards can understand the simple functionality of that. But it appears that the staff and also the public really like this, basically this portal for them to be able to look at compliance cases.
Yeah, and again, to go back and stress, this was done at the sort of after the last minute. You know, the basic MyGov software went live without a public portal. And we offered to start helping on this in November of 2019, and by February of 2020, this thing was live out to the public. So in about 2.5 months, you know, we worked with MyGov, worked with code compliance staff, and worked amongst ourselves to make this solution become a reality. So it really was kind of a fast and furious thing. This was a full-time job for Skip and I for a couple months. So
We'll stop sharing here.
okay, Brett, questions?
Yeah, well, thanks, gentlemen. Just shows the power when people are brought in who know what they're doing to actually meet the business requirement. It would be nice to have that on the front end rather than at the bottom of the ninth inning, right?
Indeed.
We do have a couple questions coming in, and I'm going to generalize the first one just a little bit. So when you're going back to speaking about using NIME and the capabilities that it had, and you may have mentioned this, and I apologize if you did, but how did you settle on that particular tool as your solution versus other ETL tools such as maybe Alteryx or any of a variety of others? Did you have previous experience with that? Were there unique capabilities? What kind of made you land on that particular solution?
I'll answer that one. NIME is basically an open source software data miner that is really, really popular. The reason we went to that was it was easier to connect to their database that way, and then also had to transform some of the, like I said, some of the variables, some of the fields, case types to a Microsoft case type from MySQL. NIME works really easy because another thing too, it goes by steps, and you can see each step when it works and look at the data that way too. And I have a lot of experience using NIME. Like I said, it's open source, and you can also set it up as a job like I do, and it really does the job for you.
So as a follow-up to that, so as you're able to see that progress through when you're testing that or developing that, is it analogous to what in a ArcGIS realm would be kind of like a Jupyter notebook where you can go step by step and see the output of that as you go along?
Yes, you can. It's just like that. It's luckily the newer softwares now, like Juniper notebooks and stuff like that, help developers or anybody using it to be able to look at data and say, hey, I got that join right. So I can look at the data each step before you go to the next step to make sure you got everything right. Yeah.
Great. And another question that's come in is what's been the feedback from your stakeholders? Have they turned around and cast an eye back on the people who bought the MyGov software originally, or has it just been a general positive reaction?
I think it's been a general positive reaction. Like I said, a lot of the staff are using the dashboard in lieu of the MyGov software. And it's, I think just the fact that it's out there, and it replaced what was previously there, and that functionality, that people were just generally happy with that. I don't think anyone really cared much what we had to go through to make it happen, or that it was thrown in at the very last minute. But generally the feedback's been very good. Again, this was supposed to be, we offered this as a temporary solution. The original plan was for MyGov to develop a more fully fleshed out public interface for their software. So one of the downsides of this was Skip did such a good job with this that once they started using it, any talk of MyGov following up and developing a back-end solution, like all that talk went away. So I think our group was just happy enough with this that they don't care if MyGov follows through and develops their new public interface. So.
Right. And just one last question from a personal note. So has this particularly opened people's eyes at the city council level or at the executive level, or just users who, this has made been a vehicle for you to make inroads to convince people of what your group has to offer or what the technology has to offer?
The timing of this was pretty good. We've actually done several of these sort of all in the same kind of time span. So I think City Council at this point expects these things. We also, in this past year, the city hired a chief data officer who works extremely close with our group. Skip probably does more for him than he does for me at this point. But they're really building out our open data portal, using insights and dashboards. So that it's really becoming the norm now.
Great. Okay, well, again, thanks again, gentlemen. It is 10 o'clock, so we don't want to prevent people from jumping to other sessions. Just a couple of quick notes. Just to reiterate, videos will be on YouTube. And if you haven't, or please be sure, since this is a virtual conference and this is our first time cutting our teeth on this, please be sure to fill out any feedback surveys that you get. We really want to get that input from you as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to let everybody go. Thanks, Steve and Skip. It was really interesting, and everybody enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care.
Thanks, Brett.